so locked into this open borders policy. It's not because their voters enjoy this kind of mayhem. They don't. The president has the support of the vast majority of Americans in trying to control this. It's because the elites, the top 10%, the top 20%, that upper middle class professional, over-credentialed, educated caste, that is the Democrats' base. And they have abandoned the working class, including union workers, in order to do that, which is why the president is just cleaning up with the multiracial working class coalition that he has built.
These people are throwing a tantrum like toddlers because they cannot imagine a world where 77 million people voted for Trump.
This is like the Fox Sarah Eisen.
And they're pissed. 2, Karen Bass wouldn't need to have a curfew if she had things under control. She doesn't have things under control, which is why she's a curfew. 3, stop rioting. Let me walk my kids to school safely. Get back to work. Get off your butt. Get to work. Get a job. And stop burning the cities.
That's what I'm talking about, Taylor. Coming up, one old school
Taylor,
tool is making...
I swear I feel like she used to work at Bloomberg. It says here, oh, I was right. Dude, I knew she looked familiar. No way. I'm like, that's the Bloomberg chick. Taylor Riggs joined Fox Business in December of 22. Prior to joining Fox Business News Network or whatever, Riggs spent 9 years at Bloomberg News, where she co-anchored a daily program on Bloomberg TV covering equities, bonds, currencies, and commodities. I knew it. It's her. Discovered the answer. Mayor Karen Bass. Angelinos are trying to live their lives, going to work, caring for their families while facing the constant threat of sudden immigration crackdowns. The fear paralyzes communities. We saw it before. Kids too scared to go to school, families torn apart without warning. Let's not pretend this is about public safety. It's political retribution, plain and simple. You know, to some extent, it is true that you've had people who have been led to believe that if you come to America, even illegally, and you claim asylum, that over time you'll be able to earn citizenship. Now, that could be through a temporary protected status, that could be through a green card or whatever. People were led to believe this. You know, Trump is taking that belief away. Okay, that's his prerogative. That's what he campaigned on. He campaigned on securing the border. He campaigned on deporting people, and he won. So that happens, you know, so now you have this change. Is there likely some more targeting in LA because it's, you know, home of Karen Bass, who's a pretty big failure as a mayor, especially what we saw during the fires, and also a core city within Newsom's state? Well, of course, it's a perfect way to target Democrats for the Trump administration. So Trump is accomplishing two things. He's fulfilling campaign promises of deportations and changing this sort of historical precedent that even if you come over illegally, eventually you can get your way into citizenship. And I understand that because immigration has been part of the longstanding history of U.S. culture and otherwise. You know, that's just now being flipped on its head because, you know, while we're hoping to get better legal immigration, we're still stuck with the crappy immigration system that we have right now, while also going through deportations, which obviously does exactly what Karen Bass says here. So she's not wrong. There are children who are too scared to go to school. There are children who are afraid to go to work. There are families that are being torn apart because of these deportations. So these things are true. Now, some people say that's absolutely terrible. You know, families shouldn't be torn apart. Other people say, well, they're here illegally, and so they should be. Ultimately, everybody's going to have their own opinion on that. Typically, you're going to find people who lean more right are going to say, this is what I voted for, and people who lean left are going to go, this is like inhumane and it's not fair, because people were following sort of standards that existed in place for very long periods of time. But let's see what some of the comments are here. There's a phone number if you need help, LA Helpline. That's interesting. Let me rewrite this as if you were not a Marxist who wants us dead. Actual citizens are trying to live their lives, going to work, caring for their families, while facing the constant threat of sanctuary city chaos. This fear paralyzes communities. We saw it before, kids. So it's an interesting way to write this, because really what this argument does, this peachy Karen or whatever, the argument that she's making is, well, you know, like people who are legal are threatened by violent criminals. And it's true, some of the illegal immigrants are violent criminals. But I would argue it's probably like a 10 to 1, or honestly even like 99 to 1 who are legal, just hardworking individuals trying to make a living, building homes or, working farms or working landscaping or whatever, that are being deported. And maybe, again, 1% to 10% of those are actually violent criminals. Tommy, it's almost like when you break the law, you have to be fearful that you're going to get caught and pay the consequences. This is true. So in the past, you didn't have to be fearful of that because you just didn't really have that many deportations, especially under a Biden administration. You did more so under Obama, who also used expedited removal quite regularly. But you're right, Karen, because people who break the law are upset with consequences. We should not enforce the law at all. You were so smart. Okay, this is just the classic argument of just Democrats don't want to enforce the law. I mean, in fairness, you've seen a lot of lawlessness in democratic cities. I mean, we've seen what's happened in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, San Francisco. These are all left-leaning cities that, thought, hey, maybe if we legalize drugs, there'll be less crime. And oh my gosh, crime actually got worse. Maybe if we don't throw people into jail, crime will get better. And oh my gosh, wow, crime got worse. So like some of these democratic experiments have failed, and it's time for the Democratic Party to kind of wake up and move away from these things. It's about enforcing the law. If you don't like the law, you could change it with the law, but you don't get to attack law enforcement and interfere with their activity. Totally agree with this, by the way. Like, don't attack law enforcement. You don't have to show up to these riots, right? 95% of Los Angeles isn't affected by these riots or protests or whatever. Most people don't care about this, and like it doesn't affect them. But there are a lot of people this does affect, and so there are definitely arguments on both sides here. So I get it, but I can't like a comment from her because I can't stand this lady. I think she's terrible as a mayor. I think he could have chosen a rock and done a better job. But don't get me wrong, like as much as I try to stay neutral, I just don't like Newsom and Bass. Somebody here in the comments is saying, I'm hearing no one is willing to work on fields and construction. Does that mean prices will go up on everything? Well, yeah. I mean, sure. What happens is if, like, your house cleaners or your landscapers or whatever get deported, yes, somebody's got to do the work, and you're going to have to hire somebody who's paid a substantially higher wage than somebody who's willing to work illegally. And like, frankly, if you go to pay, clean your house with an American company, you're probably paying like $350 to $500, depending on how large your house is. You pay somebody who maybe doesn't pay taxes, although even illegal individuals can pay taxes because you can get a taxpayer identification number and you can pay taxes. Why you would versus not, TBD. But yeah, I mean, you might only pay like $250 to somebody else. So like there is that price discrepancy. So yeah, like I don't think people are wrong when they say like what we saw in that Fox segment where people are like, oh, people are upset that people have to pay higher prices. Well, yeah, absolutely. The same thing for farm workers, like strawberries or blueberries or, cabbage or whatever. Like these are all components that are of basically consumer prices that are worked by people who are typically undocumented immigrants. And, they're trying to become legal. They're trying to pay for their family. They're trying to get ahead. And even the wages that they're getting paid on the fields are still twice the wages they could be getting, in Mexico or another country. So it's just sort of like basic economics. Somebody says, if we deport all 20 million, the economy would take a big hit. And then obviously the question is that worth it? I personally think the best case scenario is like, you should just vet immigrants appropriately. And like, it's okay to like, if you take these 20 million people who are living here, if there's a question like deport all of them or not deport all of them, I think that's too binary. I think what you really need is, can we screen these 20 million people and case by case in an expedited way say, look, you're a hard-ass worker. We want you. You stay. Here's some, green card or whatever. Now prove yourself. Otherwise, we're stripping it and you're going back to your country, right? And then you are an asshole criminal. Out. Well, like, that's what I would do with this bucket of 20 million people. I wouldn't destroy families and destroy parts of the economy and remove hard workers from America, because of the mandate to deport illegals. I would try to, like, strain the group of people and go, let's work a legal immigration process. Let's figure out how to get you paying taxes, get you paying into the economy. You know what they do with green card holders is they'll say things like, we'll let you be a green card holder, but you have to promise not to use any social services. You're not allowed to get social services. You're not allowed to get, like the bare minimum sort of benefits or whatever if you fall behind or whatever. If you work here and work your butt off and you can make your own living without the support of the government, you could stay. And you're not a criminal, right? That'd be my POV on this, right? So let's see here. Case to case will take like 5 years. Well, that's the problem. That's why it's easier to just kick everybody out, right? So, LOL, I love how since you're an illegal immigrant, people automatically think you're a hard worker. Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you have an incentive as an undocumented immigrant to work really hard because, frankly, you're working for a lower wage, so you have to. It's not necessarily that you want to, it's that you have to. And I'm not saying that like makes you as a personality like, oh, okay, yeah, they're all hard workers. No, I mean, I'm sure they're lazy people as well. I mean, it's going to be the same distribution curve, like they're, 30% of Germans are going to be lazy and 30% are going to be really hardworking and 60% or 40% rather are going to be somewhere in the middle. The same thing is going to be true of Mexicans. The same thing is going to be of Canadians. The same thing is going to be of Chinese. You'll have little changes at the margins, but I don't think that really matters so much. So let's see. Somebody says, no, deport them all. Even if they're a hard worker, they're taking from an American worker. Well, that's not necessarily true because you're working industries that Americans don't necessarily want to work. Like, do you want to go work picking strawberries in the field in, 90-degree weather in the summer? Get like to where you have to wear sweaters and hoodies so you don't get skin cancer and die? Like, do you really want to go do that job? Do you really want to go, clean somebody's bathrooms? Like, these are jobs that people don't want to do who are in America. So this whole idea of like, oh, like I saw this argument from some Republicans where they're like, oh, hey, if you got fired from the federal government, why don't you go do a job that an immigrant is doing? And it's like, really? So you're going to take that DMV worker and you're going to put them in a strawberry field? Come on, man, you're talking about two totally different economies here. These are two totally different labor markets. It's almost like one person's shopping for a Tesla and the other person is shopping for a Caterpillar $1 million reaper harvester machine. Like, these are two totally different markets. Yes, they're both machinery. Yes, technically they're both styles of automobiles, but they're two totally different markets. The same is actually true to some extent of this labor that we're talking about. So a fired federal worker versus an undocumented worker working in the fields or working construction jobs. These are entirely different skill sets, entirely different markets. So I don't think that works here. Somebody says here, Kevin himself is an immigrant. Would his parents want to come in these current conditions? No sane person is against deporting undocumented people. We should still want legal immigration. Well, we came here legally, right? And that's why I encourage so much more legal immigration. We were green card holders. We came here on a work visa, got green cards, and eventually I became a dual citizen. So what was I, like 18 months old or whatever? It's like telling a pipeline worker to go to code. Yeah, it's very true. The original Steven says, these are the real issues here. We need more conversations like that. Well, I appreciate you saying that. Just saying the current work conditions are bad doesn't take away an American can't work that job. I mean, that's fair. Like, technically, yes, could an American do those jobs? Of course. But, is that an issue right now? I don't know. I guess you could make the argument that the vacancy rate for jobs is very low right now. So you could make the argument that, you kind of have a lack of jobs available right now. Maybe the vacancy rate would rise if those jobs became available. This is true. The way you then solve that is you go, okay, farms now have to pay higher labor costs. Fine, then go subsidize the labor market for farm workers, right? You could do that. That would be a way of solving that potential issue. That's true. Why is it always people don't live in LA or in an immigrant major city always the most angry? Well, yeah, I mean, that might be a broad generalization, but I see what you mean. Like, I think what you're arguing is if you're not living in an area that is like more multicultural, there's a little bit, it's easier to sort of have that us versus them mentality. I think that's fair. I mean, like, personally, I work with a lot of immigrants, obviously. I mean, in the work we do, it's like, as far as I'm aware, everybody's legal, you know. But you know, like, I don't care what language you speak, where you were born, what color you are. I don't give a flying F. If you're a good person who's not a criminal, you're here to contribute to the economy, I would want to live here too. You know, I would want to live in America too. So, like, I don't blame people at all. I live in San Diego. We're doing just fine here. San Diego's beautiful. If we ever send money to another country, they are still taxed on the local, state, federal level. If they send money out. This is true. This is true. I think we have enough foreigners. We should send you back. You could send me back, and I could still do videos from Germany. Honestly, I wouldn't have to wake up as early. I could do the videos at, like, you know, what, 9 minus, or 9 plus 6 would be 4 or 5. I could do them at like 5 p.m. You know, we could have market open at like 5:30 p.m. in Germany. It'd actually be quite convenient. I could have a whole day and then do my streams at night in Germany. So that's it. Deport Kevin. Send him away. Send him back to Germany, where he came from. Back to where he came from. We don't want him here. We don't need him. He says things that we don't always agree with about the Trump administration. He does also say some bad things about the Democrats too, but because he includes me, he's not a friend of me. Let's see here. People in jail want out. People in hell want ice. Moral of the story, you don't always get what you want. Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. We need immigration reform, so people we need for these jobs are able to come and go legally. That's fair. I work remotely for U.S. companies. I do machine learning / AI development. I make an extremely high wage, willingly living in a low-cost country. Am I in danger of being subject to a tariff? What you're asking for is a tariff on services, like human labor services. That's very difficult to tax. Like, it's almost like an Upwork tax, right? That would be quite challenging. I don't know if they could pull that off. I find that unlikely. Tariffs on labor or services, maybe in a future economy I could see it happen, but right now it seems like there's enough punishing that you could do with a goods economy that you don't really have to get that complicated yet. You know, they were trying to do that with the movie industry. You know, movie production, like where the movie shot, we're going to tariff them. You know, Trump was threatening this. It's substantially more complicated. It's hard enough to implement tariffs on all the products. Speaking of Germany, what are your thoughts on the German economy? Well, the German economy seems to be U-turning. You know, they actually, I mean, Germany is an example of one of the downsides of just unmitigated immigration. I mean, the mother of Germany, they always said, Angela Merkel, was ridiculously over-liberal with asylum immigrations, the importation of Turkish and Syrian migrants with essentially no screening, and the quantity of the immigration that's created substantial cultural change in you know, significant parts of Germany. That is, in fairness, a very real argument of one of the downsides of unmitigated, unregulated immigration. Now, I'm not saying that it's not nice for people to be able to get away from their war-torn country and flee to safety in a place like Germany. But, you know, now Germany is providing, as far as I'm aware, you know, this is just what I'm hearing from German family. I have not fact-checked this, so please fact-check this for me. But what I'm hearing is migrants can receive money for essentially being in Germany or arriving in Germany. And some of these payments are greater than what even Germans are receiving. And so there's a lot of frustration about that. So migrant money, Germany. I'm curious. I don't know. In Germany, financial support for asylum seekers is provided through various systems, including the Asylum Seekers Benefit Act. They can pay for food, shelter. There could be a cash benefit of 367 euros per month for a couple, 150 for singles. Asylum seekers may receive compensation of up to 200 euros for voluntary work, welfare benefits, blah, 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 blah. Like, you know, that pisses off a lot of hardworking Germans. And so I think this is why I say, like, if you're going to have a legal immigration process, I'm a big fan of saying, look, if you want to be a legal immigrant here, go work, but don't ask me for state benefits. Don't ask me for what you're seeing in New York City, where people are getting hotel rooms for being an undocumented immigrant. You know, that's bullcrap. There are plenty of Americans who are suffering. Like, if they want to be here and go work, again, I'm a fan of a pathway to legalization. But this idea of you know, give money away, I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of that. So now, again, am I opposed to asylum seekers moving to European country? No. Again, it's a limitation thing and a fairness thing to existing citizens. So it's a balance. I think Angela Merkel went a little too far. Am I saying all Syrians are bad? No. I know Syrians. I know people from Turkey. They're wonderful people. I've never met I personally, maybe I'm just lucky, I've had great experiences with people from Iran. I've had clients from Iran. I've had great experiences with people from Russia, from Syria. Like, I don't really care where you're from, like I've said. But it's a balance thing. And somebody brings up the question of Germany on an immigration topic. I think that's somewhat important to talk about, and it's just an example.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.